Okay. Tuesday edition of the After Show. Got Week of Justice with you week over here on the East Coast.
And justice over here on the west coast of the contiguous United States of America. It is Red Sky at Morning Tuesdays on the After Show. You know, there's a red sky and a storm are brewing somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
I say it's also afternoon somewhere, and it's a good time to get your martinis chilling.
Indeed it is.
Speaking of chilling, how are you doing, Mike?
Not bad, not bad. It is 55 degrees here in New York, 21. And that's pretty much going to be the high today, I think. I don't think it's going to go much higher than that, but we'll take 55. Raining. Happens to be my birthday today, and as they say, as James Garner said to Sally Field in that movie where she owned a ranch, when she asked him how old he was, he said, just light the whole damn cake on fire.
Just like
because there's just not enough room for candles anymore. Let
me just say real quick, happy birthday. And, it's so hard because one never knows if it's just like, is that when you made your Skype ID? That
exactly,
kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's nice to know, like, oh, that is your birthday. Well, happy birthday.
Yeah, I've got a couple different ones for the internet, but this is the real one today. Sadly, but mind you, get the chat. Just go to netrootsradio.com. Scroll down the bottom of the page, and on the right hand side of the bottom of the page, there is a link to the chat. So click that. Join us there.
And, of course, to the leftish of the chat room, we are the donate, contribute buttons. And thank you, the hardware and software purchases that we need to make for this coming year's broadcasts.
Yes.
And beyond, of course. We're still in need of that. So thank you for your generosity in helping us achieve that. Here along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, it is currently 47 degrees. We're slated to go to 70. They say overcast, and it is. It's overcast right now.
Yeah, rain.
We don't have a forecast of rain for several more days, but it is in the offing, which means I better hurry up because I got some stuff that I don't want it to get rained on because it'll turn into a mucky mess.
Yeah.
So we don't want that. And other things that, I don't know. It's sort of like I feel like the little chipmunk or the squirrel, Better start storing up for the winter. And winter's hardly over.
Yeah, exactly.
But, back to work.
I know that feeling, though. Yeah, you almost got to do it right off the bat. Yep.
When I lived on some boats, vessels, that's the thing is that you make your circuit, and it may take months or a year for you to go completely around the boat and do what needs to get done, and then you get done, and then you have to start all over again.
Right.
There's no stopping.
No.
Jeez.
Nope. So,
that old adage, the best and worst day of your life is when you bought and then sold your boat. So it's the best and worst day, both of those days.
Yes.
I do remember that when I moved off my boat after living on it for a considerable time, in different marinas, by the way, when I lived in a relatively small in-law space, and the thing I noticed is that, like, when cars drove by, my unit didn't, like, rock and bounce against the dock and stuff. It was really a different kind of existence. I had to get used to it, get my land legs back, as they say.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that was a big thing I noticed. I'd hear a car drive by, and I go, wow, he's really calm. I think I'll go back to sleep again. It was really quite wonderful. If you never lived on a boat, you probably don't know what I'm talking about.
I think it'd be the greatest. I think it'd be in a nice warm location.
When other boats are coming through your little marina area and they're going more than 5 miles an hour, even 5 miles an hour,
right?
They throw a wake,
right?
And your boat bounces all over the place, and it bounces against the dock, and it makes all sorts of noises, and it mars up the finish that you just put on your hull. Yep. You got to go out there and sand that down again. It's like every night. And then you're hoping the harbor master will catch the scofflaws.
Yeah, exactly.
How dare those scofflaws do that? And, when I moved off my boat, the thing I noticed is that a car would drive by and my unit would be calm. It was so wonderful. I remember that.
Indeed.
And I didn't have to, sand it every day.
Right. Even better yet.
Oh, man. That was wonderful. Oh, and this is the other thing. Other thing I noticed. You go to say, you need some rope, right? Or, for your apartment, say you might need, what might you need? Like some fasteners, screws or something to fasten, things with. And you go to the hardware store and they ask you, is this for a maritime application? You say yes, and they just mark it up about 300% right off the top. Same screw.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a big thing I noticed. Okay. Enough of that. We got Chris coming up. Tom Servo, fourth read, so I better get on this here. So much news. Apparently, Jared Kushner is de facto president. I don't know. I mean, he's doing everything, right?
Right.
It's kind of scary in a way. And I'm not shocked that Eric Prince was setting up some sort of back channel, with the Trump administration and Putin,
Right.
The complaint is that, he's doing the job of a diplomat. And I go, well, in a way, if you think a diplomat's kind of like Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
Except without the insight, self-reflection, and, let's get real, true power.
Right.
But, he fancies himself, little Alexander the Great. And, he would be a good soldier. And, he's doing God's work. He is one of those Christian soldiers. And that makes it even more, well, how shall we put it? Insidious?
Yeah.
But when everybody says, well, Jared this, Jared that, I go, don't worry, Eric Prince is helping out now. We got Eric Prince. Okay. Or as I like to say, you can G Trump from here. Oh, because Blackwater became Academy.
Oh, yeah.
And then became G. Or no, became, G or then Academy, and now they're back to, I don't know, whatever it is. Global strategies. Global strategies. I like that one.
Yeah, global strategies. I like that. Yeah.
That says it all. Okay, well, these are the issues we will be attending to today. A Trump supporter, Wink, is upset. They always have buyer's remorse when they find out what the hell they got. I got a lemon.
Yeah.
Well, she's upset that if she doesn't accept the less than market value for her property, the border wall will just put her house on the Mexican side. How you like them apples?
Yeah, there you go.
Hit and run accidents fell over 7% from the previous year after undocumented immigrants got driver's licenses in California. Yeah, putting to the lie that we would be less safe.
Right.
Funny about that. And revelations from the Panama Papers about Putin, Russian mobsters, heads of government, and the hollowed halls of the financial industry reverberate on the 1-year anniversary of its publication. Yeah, let's not forget about the Pentagon or the Panama Papers. Okay. Oh, and as I alluded to earlier for the last half, we visit with Chris Reeves, also known affectionately here as Tom Servo, 433.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
For reports on Kansas Republicans, Wink, moving to prevent Democrats from presenting bills.
There you go.
They've had too many defeats, and the only way to stop this terrible insurrection against American values is to prevent the other side from even being able to present a bill.
Exactly.
With 3 votes short of an override, Brownback's veto of Medicaid expansion is a Kansas community killer, and the Missouri GOP breaks its promise, I'm shocked, and instead will make voter ID requirements a secret surprise at the ballot box. How do you like them apples again? All that plus the Connect, Unite, Act, Daily Coast community calendar and more. We try not to have too much more, but we always have more.
Right.
Here on the After Show, with that ever so fine fellow on the East Coast with his attendant, yet less windy East Coastal elitism.
Exactly.
They were supposed to have gale force winds today, but
Yeah.
he's got less wind in his East Coastal elitism. But subtle though it be, and his name is Wink, and this fellow back over here on the West Coast with my blatant and some might say overbearing, whatever, elitism or something, whatever it is. And my name is Justice, and we do this 5 days a week for about an hour-ish in this specific, particular, and peculiar tear in the fabric of space-time because we love you, baby.
Exactly.
That's right. It's weird watching Bonanza, because it's sort of in the ecosystem that I live in, the general one, because Reno and Tahoe isn't too far away.
Right.
And in terms of landscape, it is much closer than what even the Bay Area would be, which is even just 4 hours away.
Right.
But I live in that chaparral type thing. So when I was a little kid, Bonanza was kind of a neat show because you felt like it was in your backyard,
Heck yeah.
And so it was a little weird. Also, just knowing what was going on in the world at the time, and then the storylines reflected in our pop culture and whatnot. And so, it's kind of weird watching Bonanza now, and Hop Sing being is kind of like quite stereotypically racist, one might say. But for the time, having like a relative lead in the series that was ethnic was shocking. Isn't that weird?
Oh, it's a big deal.
Weird.
Yep.
I mean, when I look at it now, I go, God, I so feel sorry for the actor that had to play Hop Sing. Actually, after the show, he didn't get paid very much, but he was a world-renowned Chinese chef.
Ah, good. Yep.
And of course, he played, the cook.
He did. Yep.
On the Ponderosa, and though he never cooked for the show or anything, truly, I mean, like for the cast or whatnot.
Right.
But after the show, yeah, indeed, he had to get a food line, and he went around and gave speeches and food shows and sold cookbooks, basically to make ends meet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I like to think that we've come far, and it sounds to me like Trump wants to put us before the enlightened time of even being able to have a Hop Sing as a relative lead on a Western of the West. So we got that going for us. All right, let's get into these stories before I start having to go too quick to get it to Chris. Okay, so this Trump supporter says, I will have to get a lawyer. If I have to, I will. To fight her great hero. And this is by the Great T-Bug out of our story. Trump supporters in Texas are coming to the realization that their vote for the president may force some of them out of their homes for less than they are worth, with others finding out that if they stay, they'll be living in Mexico instead. Doesn't he do this to everybody? He just screws everybody that works with him, wink. And especially the ones who are the rubes who put the most trust in him. Hence his fraudulent university, for instance. Right. I mean, anybody with half brain knows that this is just like the typical real estate seminar of like positive thinking and with a little mix of creative financing. Or as like they sometimes call in the industry fraudulent bookkeeping. Creative financing, fraudulent bookkeeping. Nah, it's real estate. And now they're finding out. Wow, it's like every bad property transaction that I had to go through and sue my real estate agent, and they're nowhere to be found now. And they were their own broker, too. So where are they? You always wonder about that. According to one family who had their farm cut in half, part of it in the U.S. and part of it in Mexico. Wow, this got to be tough, paying taxes to two different countries. They are still stunned that government was able to take their property 10 years ago. Well, that was during the Bush administration. Why would the Bush administration... Oh, yeah, they were building a border wall, too, weren't they? I was very angry. I just kept saying, how can they do this? How is that possible in the United States that they can do this? Well, when you got a Supreme Court going 5-4, this guy's president stopped the count. Things happen. He won. Get over it. Remember we used to hear that? He won. Get over it. It left us no property on the U.S. side of the border wall, including my house. Everything was behind on the Mexican side of the U.S. border fence, with her husband adding they enter the U.S. through a locked gate. Wow. I wonder if they're going to check their social media on their devices every time they go through that gate, huh? Huh? You punch a code in, or you come behind the border wall. There's a feeling of isolation, her husband, Ray Loop, explained. With hundreds of additional miles of Trump's proposed wall expected to be built along the Texas border, thousands of landowners may be forced to sell their property to the government or stay and live in changed circumstances. Well, that's a nice way of putting it. Changed circumstances like, now I'm paying taxes in Mexico, I'm paying taxes in the United States, no taxation without representation. Who do I redress my grievances to? Oh, I don't know. According to Pat Bell of Riverbend, she voted for Trump but never supported his border wall plan. Now, I would argue if you voted for Trump, you supported his border wall ban. He wasn't secret about it, or a border wall bill. He wasn't secret about it. He ran on it. Now they're trying to tell us, Wink, that the reason that Trump won is because of his good looks.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that was it.
You mean the American sense of beauty is sunk so low that this is considered good looking? Wispy hair Dawn? I thought hair was supposed to be the sign of virility. I mean, you look at that and it's like, I don't know. If you can see through it, I don't think maybe it's really the sign of virility. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Not like Michael Landon, Little Joe. He kept his hair throughout the whole show. Everybody else had to wear a wig. And when he was in Little House on the Prairie, he still had a pretty good mane, and it was all his.
Right.
Not that I consider Michael Landon the epitome of virility, but he had his hair.
Yeah.
And he didn't have to put bobby pins and do products.
Okay. Right.
Okay. Absolutely, I would go to the people who were in charge, and I hate to say it, but I would get a lawyer. But it comes to that issue, wouldn't you? Welcome to America, lady. And I mean spelled with a K. America. In Texas, too. I can't believe Texans just stand for this. Man, this is the stuff that they like went to this mission and fought it out with Santana and others.
Right.
For a few days even, till the last man was standing.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez. Well, like I said, if it's Trump's good looks that got him elected and keep him popular, which begs the question, at 32%,
yeah.
I don't think that's very good looking in my book. Okay. Who knew that this would happen? Who would have thought this? Oh, you know what? Probably some social justice warrior doing their social engineering. This is out of the LA Times, and let me scroll down here to give you the correspondent. Benjamin Oreskes, out of the LA Times. A California law giving immigrants... Now, should I amend and maybe edit this on the fly like I usually do when terminology that isn't in the Netroots Radio style book come to the fore, or do I read it as is? This is always the dilemma here in the after show.
Right.
They use terms that I hate, like illegally.
Yeah.
But
it's
shorthand,
vernacular.
Okay. Well, get those people, undocumented immigrants, the ability to get driver's licenses appears to have helped decrease hit-and-run accidents, according to a Stanford study released yesterday, Monday. Well, of course, you know what? The argument will be from the heads of our government will say, damn the facts. It just feels like illegals are going to cause more accidents. It just feels like that would be the truth.
Right.
And your study, it means nothing. You're an egg-headed liberal elitist. Get out of my face. Oh, you're getting a government grant? So much for that one. Stanford. And the Hoover people are going, wait. We're pretty arch conservative. Come on, man. We're the Hoover Foundation. Come on, we're right here in the Stanford campus. And Trump goes, eggheads. I hated them all. I bet that's really what it is. He was a shitty student. I heard he was a pretty bad baseball player, too. They said that his teammates at that private school said that he was rather adept at the bat in breaking it after he would strike out at the plate, and one time trying to beat a former teammate with it.
Yeah.
So he was pretty good with the bat.
Yeah.
Well, the controversial law, part of a larger effort by state officials to provide rights and services to California residents in the country, and the LA Times says illegally, resulted in more than 850,000 people getting driver's licenses since the law took effect in 2015. So in 1 year, wink, they saw a 7% decrease in this. Now, the Stanford study estimated the hit and run accidents decreased at least 7% in 2015 compared with 2014 using a complex formula. The researchers concluded that there were 4,000 fewer hit and runs that year because of the new law. Supporters of the measure argued that it would make California roads safer because those here quote, illegally, end quote, to be forced to take the driver's test and would be less likely to flee from accidents out of fear of being arrested or deported. Well, I would expect to see accidents and hit and runs completely go through the roof now, wouldn't you?
There you go. Yeah.
You know, safety be damned. We have a branding that we have to fulfill. And we branded black and brown people a threat to our way of life, and whenever they're around, you know you're unsafe and something bad is going to happen, and we're here to make sure.
Yeah.
Now, the Department of Motor Vehicles wasn't able to actually release the actual names of the people, you know, so that the researchers could study this, but they did a rather not surprising, but it's rather. I'm trying to find the correct superlative, but it was enlightened. It was an enlightened way of doing it. What they did is that they went county by county, and they found that, you know, in counties that had high incidences of undocumented populations, and they saw an uptick in driver's licenses in those counties when the law went in effect. And so, you know, you kick out the high and you kick out the low, and you find some number in the middle there, right? So out of that, then they extrapolated these many new driver's licenses are attributed to these many undocumented immigrants who now have licenses, and now we see a massive decrease in the levels of hit and run accidents. Now, that's not to say the study didn't say that accidents themselves decreased, but you know, our whole system of car insurance revolves around the idea of people sticking around and trading each other's license plate numbers so that you can get recompense for damages done, or you know, you're covered for damages incurred, you know, given or whatnot. And so this mitigated a lot of these issues of hit and run. And there's numbers about how much insurance saved in the midst of this too. And but it's a new America now, buddy. Expect to see that one change. Okay, this next article is out of the McClatchy Washington Bureau, who were, by the way, part of the consortium of journalists who were able to put together the Panama Papers and distribute them so in a journalistic fashion so we could follow it. This article is by Kevin G. Hall of McClatchy. A year after the publication of the Panama Papers, which ripped back the veil from the secretive world of offshore companies, 2 U.S. states are addressing shortcomings, but a bellwether prosecution is only inching forward. The Panama Papers involve the leak of 11.5 million private documents from the Panamanian law firm Mossack Fonseca, which had set up offshore companies for clients since the 80s. In the U.S., these leaked documents showed how foreigners used companies established in Wyoming, Nevada, and other states to mask ownership of assets in Russia, Brazil, and other faraway places. Oh, so far away. U.S. states were being used by foreigners, much like wealthy Americans use the Bahamas or the Cayman Islands. working together in secret for more than a year, at least 370 journalists from media outlets across the globe published a series of stories beginning on April 3rd of 2016 that shook the halls of power and rocked the financial world. The stories reveal that close associates of Russian leader Vladimir Putin, including his lifelong friend Sergei Roldygin, godfather to one of his daughters, were moving huge sums through secretive offshore companies. They also exposed how drug cartels relied on the offshore world. The initial reports caused the government of Iceland to fall and hastened the exit of British Prime Minister David Cameron, and reporting about Brazil burst open a bribery scandal that helped topple the president and legislative leaders. That scandal has now spread to Colombia, Peru, and Panama. Subsequent reporting revealed dozens of U.S. convicted or accused financial fraudsters in the Panama Papers, as well as hedge fund operators and others in the more sophisticated corridors of finance. You mean like the legal ones that we all know and love, who are involved in some sort of clandestine operation? I'm shocked. The International Consortium of Investigative Journalists led the global effort, and McClatchy with the Miami Herald was the sole U.S. newspaper partner. Its ground-level reports from these states triggered local legislative changes for incorporation in Wyoming and Nevada. Shine a light on it, and change seems to happen. You know, it's similar to what happens in the White House right now. We wouldn't have known or heard about anything from Jared about his meeting with a banker that happened to be surveilled for a decade or more by the FBI, right? Didn't tell us anything about that secretive meeting in December until it was divulged, and now they have to talk about it. And what is the meme they're putting out, Wink? It was wrong for the FBI to be following that Russian mobster so that Jared would get caught up in it.
Right.
Okay. The release of the Panama Papers exposed the secrecy afforded corrupt public officials, crime cartels, individual tax cheats, and others, said Gary Coleman, executive director of the Financial Accountability and Corporate Transparency Coalition, which advocates for more reporting requirements for true owners of financial instruments. The Treasury Department began a pilot project last year requiring pricey real estate transactions involving shell companies and sales valued at $1 million and above to report the true owners of the shell companies. Title insurance companies have to report the names of buyers to Treasury. It began with New York and South Florida, and later in the year was continued and expanded to Southern California. And real estate agents all over the region were going, wait a second, man. I mean, we're talking about my 1.5% commission. And, sometimes, when I work my way up the chain, I can almost get 2%. And 2% on $1 million. Or I don't know. I listed this property at $1.5 million and somebody came in to buy it for $10 million. I want my commission. That's what they're whining about. There's also a thing that you can't, this only works with banks, I suppose. But it always raises red flags when someone comes in and pays much more than what list price is for a piece of property. And that normally would create big red flags, but I suppose only if you're dealing with a reputable bank. And reputable title insurance companies. All right, let's get to our Jim Hightower break, and we'll come back and go through the Connect Unite Act Daily Coast Community Calendar, and then speak about Brownback and Missouri. You're listening to the After Show on Netroots Radio with Wink and Justice, and we will be right back.
Question: what do you get when you mix a barrel of fables, a sack of mendacity, and a gross of whoppers, topped with a thick layer of subterfuge? Answer: the fiasco called Trump Care. We're going to do something that's great, the Donald Trumpeted when he endorsed House Speaker Paul Ryan's bill to displace Obamacare. But Trump Care was great only in the sense that it was a great big bloated concoction of lies. Start with the original lie that right-wing Republicans have harped on for nearly a decade. Obamacare is a total failure. We'll, quote, repeal and replace it as soon as we get control of the national government, they shouted. Then, when Trump happened, he made killing Obama's Affordable Care Act his top legislative priority. Ryan chimed in with a perfect imitation of Chicken Little, squawking that the ACA is in a, quote, death spiral. In fact, the president and the speaker were lying. While Obamacare has flaws that require fixing, overall, it's been a tremendous success. It has reduced by almost half the number of Americans who had no health coverage, benefiting especially many white working-class people who had supported Trump. Moreover, the overwhelming majority of the millions who gained ACA coverage are satisfied and glad to have it. Undeterred, the Trumpsters tried another Chicken Little tale. The health law is doomed, they squawk, because it's been unprofitable for the insurance giants, so they're withdrawing. Bogus! In fact, the profits of Aetna, Cigna, Humana, United Health, and other managed care corporations have soared under Obamacare. The biggest one, United Health, has seen the value of its shares skyrocket by a spectacular 480% since the ACA expansion of Medicaid. This is Jim Hightower saying, that's why Trump is so hostile to truth-based news. Actual facts exposed his lies.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor. All for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Okay, we're back.
And indeed, we are back, and thank you for sticking with us. This is the After Show with Wink and Justice on Netroots Radio. Justice here along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the West Coast. Wink is in upstate New York, 21 on the East Coast. Chris Reeves is, I forgot to ask, Chris, are you moving or are you stationary?
I'm stationary today.
Okay, well, he's safely ensconced in a stable location in the vast plains of the Midwest. Known as Kansas. And our crew are the ethereal creatures who reside in the cloud as advanced intergalactic technical abilities allow Netroots Radio, and thus by extension the After Show, to span the globe, the solar system, out past the Oort cloud, and for our purposes, beyond.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, today's Connect, Unite, Act Daily Codes Community Diary is facilitated by Eric Lewis, the great cartoonist, and he opens up today with the news that matters most. And so what about you? How do you look for the news that matters most to you? I did mention with David Waldman earlier this morning that on the After Show, for instance, there's so much news happening in the world, we can't even get to our own local garage break-ins anymore. You know?
Right.
Actually, I've always been offended by local news stories because it always seemed to be a preponderance of that kind of news that sort of belied this idea that we live in dangerous times and everybody has to be on the lookout, which, you know, there's healthy ways of being protected without being obsessed about it. So, okay. Wisconsin Cossacks are, of course, putting their group together. So Cosmail Chris the Colladem to become part of Wisconsin Cossacks, and that group will be meeting up real soon, I expect. Okay, New England Cossacks will be meeting up on the 29th of April, which is a Saturday, At noon at Flatbread Pizza in Portland, Maine. Cosmail NHOX 42 to RSVP for a seat. And that's their spring 2017 meetup for Cheers and Jeers. Sounds like a planning session for Netroots Nation, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Because after April 23rd, which is a Sunday, when Navajo is in New York, and they're going to be at Spitzer's Corner at 101 Rivington Street in the Ludlow District at high noon. Cosmail Navajo to RSVP for that. And actually, after Thinking Fell in Ojibwa have had the third Epic Glacier National Park meetup held June 30th through July 2nd, and you want to Cosmail them to get on board for that meetup. The Cheers and Jeers annual dinner at Netroots Nation in Atlanta on August 9th at 5:30 p.m. at a location to be determined, because you'll be Cosmailing Navajo to RSVP for a seat. She says at the table.
Yeah.
She's going to need another convention hall to fit everybody in for this
Heck
dinner.
yeah.
I can tell right
Heck
now.
yeah.
Okay. That is your Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar for the 4th of the 4th month of 2017. And here we are in a sizable chunk of the last half to visit with Chris Reeves. Chris, how are you?
Hey, I'm okay.
You didn't I notice that you were traveling a little bit this past week?
Lots of travel.
And you visited 9 hospitals, and one of them as a patient?
That's true. I went in and out of several of the hospitals. I keep a list of hospitals that we know are struggling.
Right.
And so I took an effort, and I went to a bunch of them, about 1,300 miles traveled over 4 days, to go walk into them, talk to their providers, as we worked on Medicaid expansion here in Kansas. And I came back and ended up catching a stomach bug along the way, so got dehydrated, had to go in and get some saline pumped into me, which is always good. But no, it was a good experience. And of course, you get to see what's going on. That was in preparation of an attempt to override the governor's veto. Kansas fell 3 votes short of overriding the veto. So we had 81 votes in favor of overriding the veto, 44 against. We needed 84. So you have to have a 2/3 majority overturn a veto, just barely short. But I think that signals this is not the end. I think this debate comes up again repeatedly now.
Well, that actually begged another question, and maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit here. With such a tight vote, will electoral recriminations be in the offing? Are specific representatives identified and maybe losing their jobs?
I think that there are a couple representatives in our state who are now going to face some real heartburn at home. Really high amongst them is Claire Nod, who is up in Belleville, which is central Kansas. His district has a distressed hospital, and they know it because they've had to pass tax bonds to help them out. And in the first round, before it went to the governor for a veto, he was a vote yes. He voted to accept Medicaid expansion. And after the governor vetoed, he changed his vote to no. And that's going to be really hard to sell in his home district, because he campaigned during the election on he was a Republican who would accept Medicaid expansion. So he literally told the voters in his own district he was a pro-Medicaid expansion Republican. And then when push came to shove, he folded and went the direction of the governor and helped the governor sustain his override. And if it had been for 2 of the Republicans who voted for Medicaid expansion originally and then switched sides to against, we would have been right on top of override. But in the end, the governor twisted their arms and he got what he wanted. And I think that's a bad sign for them. That's a good sign that, they don't represent their district as much as they're somebody who can just be pushed around by the governor.
Now, earlier conversations about this with you, I've joked around about, if Brownback took this path, that
Right.
his political out was the promise of an ambassadorship somewhere, because we know the S will fly, but now with KT McFarland taking the Malaysia gig, where will Brownback land?
We don't know. We know he's fishing to get out of here as fast as he can.
Right.
Where he lands, that's going to be interesting. The one thing that we keep hearing is ambassador to the UN Food Advocacy Program or whatever, and that's in Italy. And that's, of course, a possibility. But we'll see. All we know is he wants out. So can he get out? We don't know.
Wow. So how now you had a diary before the veto override came through, or maybe even before the veto was handed down. In that, if he did go this path, it's going to really spell destruction for Kansas communities. We've already spoken a bit about Kansas hospitals, throughout the region that are distressed, and some of them are just nothing more than clinics. But
Right.
this actually reverberates like the resonating wave, because then there's pharmacies involved. There's all sorts of other side businesses that get impacted. You want to go on that?
Well, so here's the thing. A lot of these hospitals are what some of us would think of as, large-scale clinics. Because they don't do surgery or, those kind of things. But what they do is a lot of your injury triage care, nurse practitioners on board, so they can stabilize patients enough to send them to a larger hospital. And without that, you've got big swaths in western and southeast Kansas where you could have to go an hour and a half or more to get to a hospital. And that's outside of the golden window, which means the golden window means if you've had a serious injury or you're enduring a heart attack, you've really got about an hour to get into some sort of treatment to help stabilize you to minimize the damage, right?
Right.
Well, if these hospitals go away, you lose that. The other thing that I also learned this weekend was that some of the big, push, some of the things that these facilities really do that matters is that they offer things like diabetic care, so dialysis stations, and then post-op treatment programs, which means a lot of people go to the city, they get their surgery done, and then they come back and their local hospital has everything that they need for recuperation. They act as, you need to come in and do physical therapy. They're set up to do that. You need bed service for a week or two. They can do that too. So if you lose that, you basically lose the community. People would have any need. They would have to move to a larger community. And more importantly, here's the other thing. There's a lot of ancillary business that goes along with these facilities, even small ones. They tend to power a local pharmacy. They power, HVAC business does a lot of work with them. You don't think about that, but remember, all these hospitals, they have independent units in each room for the most part, and breakouts for all that kind of stuff, and so it's a lot of work for the local community, and it's decent paying work. And so if all of that goes away, you just create this giant jobs vacuum.
No, I'm just thinking. I mean, there's companies that deliver oxygen and nitrogen tanks. There's a couple of drivers that do that. Their range can be quite wide. I mean, it doesn't seem like much, but but you take away that.
Well, and
not everybody can get their pharmaceuticals by script. They actually need to go to a doctor.
Right.
And
well, the other thing you run into is this, and this is the one they're just starting to figure out. And it's one I've written a couple diaries on in the past. But ambulance service works by normally going to the nearest hospital, right? Well, In a lot of these small communities, ambulance service is provided by the city, your fire department, whatever. And when it's going to your local hospital, that's not that bad. They don't need that many ambulances. That place can stabilize them and then get them shipped out. Fine. When you don't have that facility, your ambulance service may have to pick somebody up in town and drive them an hour, hour and a half, which means not only is it an hour and a half away, it means that ambulance service is out of service in the community that they're from for upwards of 3 hours, because an hour and a half there, hour and a half back, time to relay information to the doctor there, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what does that mean? That means the local community ends up paying a whole lot more tax dollars because they have to have more ambulances to make sure that there's always at least one in town in case somebody is running out of town on an emergency. Otherwise, people call in for emergency help and they have to go, well, we don't have any ambulances right now. It might be an hour and a half before we can have somebody out to you.
Well, this is probably outside the medical stream, but in my area, there's, I don't know, for lack of a better term, more charitable organizations that offer like rides for seniors to a clinic. And they're not really under the auspices of any municipality. They may get some sort of small government stipend somewhere. I don't know. But I just know that when I was taken away in an ambulance after a fender bender that broke my ribs, it was only a few blocks and it cost several $1,000s, an hour and a half in an ambulance. I mean, that's through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're on Medicaid, part of those costs, if not all of them, are mitigated. I just can't imagine people wanting to go in an ambulance, even that they're not going to get the care, or even just because of the attendant immediate cost, or the one down the road a year and a half, or 6 months down the road. So this is going to come up again. Is it going to be during a Brownback term, or will, like as we alluded to before, he's looking to get out and get out quick?
Yeah, it's, the whole situation could very quickly turn negative.
Okay. Well, before we get on, let's speak real quickly and finish up with Kansas, and then I want to speak about the mayor race in Omaha, and then we'll finish up with Missouri. What's the story about the Kansas GOP so fed up with losing that they're going to make sure that the Democrats can't present any more bills? I just think.
Okay, so there's a tradition in most state houses where, because state houses have a lot of members, not everybody knows each other, and so you have to build camaraderie. So part of it is when somebody advocates or they promote a bill in a committee and it gets out of committee, that is the person who presents it to the body. It means they get up in front of the body, they read the bill, and then they give their position on why they supported it in the committee before the committee votes. So they're the ones who do the presentation. Well, after passing Medicaid expansion and a few other things, teacher due process, and good way to introduce some young Democrats to the body, the Speaker of the House, Reichman, decided, hey, he's going to change the rules. And so from now on, only Republicans can present a bill to the body. So it means that if a bill comes out of committee, only the ranking member of the committee, which is a Republican, can go to the well and present the bill to all the other legislators. Now, there's two problems with this. The first means that somebody who worked their butt off on it in committee doesn't get to take any credit for it. They'll never get a photo of them presenting a bill, nothing like that. Well, the second problem is you can get bills through committee and not have the ranking members all that enthused about it. They can be like, yeah, okay, whatever, move on. And so if you get people who aren't enthused about the bill, who aren't, strong supporters of the bill up there, supporting it, then the problem is those same people, they don't help the bill towards passage. So there's kind of a double whammy towards a lot of the the Democrats, but the whole thing was, well, we'll just keep you off the floor to make sure people don't know who you are, as sheerly a political play.
Oh. I like thinking that like there's this like farm club of young parliamentarians, learning about procedure, and like universities across America funded by the Koch brothers coming up with these like really obscure schemes to be able to mess up process. And I might be right.
Yeah, sometimes it seems that way, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? It really does. My God. Okay, let's get to the Omaha mayoral election. There's actually a primary going on there, and Mello and Stothert. Let's talk about that.
Heath Mello is a former Nebraska state senator. Nebraska is a unicameral, nonpartisan unicameral, which is kind of an interesting state government, but everybody knows everybody's affiliation. And he was also the first Democrat to ever be the ranking member of appropriations in the Nebraska unicameral, at least in the last 60 years. In fact, he had said that to me, and I went back and looked it up. It's even more complicated than that because there were different ways that appropriations and all that worked back then. But so he's a ranking member on that. He is someone who has looked at Omaha and said, hey, we need big changes. Some of the things he's been really strongly an advocate for are a much more environmental city government, which means better transportation system throughout the metro, support for green spaces, as well as changes with the way the city treats its residents. Now, Stothert, who's the current mayor, has been very oppositional to many of these things. And what most progressives will know her for is she was, of course, adamantly opposed to a non-discrimination standard for the city. When non-discrim came up for Omaha, she was one of those who was firmly against. Heath Mello is firmly for. So this is a chance to make some changes. Over the weekend in Nuts and Bolts, I argued that sometimes we forget about mayors, we forget about city government, and yet in those environments you can make direct and immediate changes in people's lives, especially depending on how you have elected. Omaha is a city that went pretty strongly for Hillary. There are more registered Democrats than there are Republicans, and this is a chance for them to send a big message early about their unhappiness with some of the policies that are being promoted here. So we're all kind of watching what happens today, and voting there is open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. tonight, and we'll see what happens.
Of course, the local papers speak about Omaha's broken budget and other attendant issues and such. Do political affiliations come to the fore in trying to determine how this gets fixed? Is Stothert backed by an old guard? Does Mello?
What's
who's backing Mello?
I will tell you this: that Mello is being backed pretty openly by the Nebraska Democratic Party. He's being backed most definitely by the Nebraska Democratic Party state chair, as well as quite a few who are in now. Nebraska Democratic Party state chair Jane Klebb is considered one of the, she's a board member of Our Revolution. She is a outright activist. So she is someone who is very active on these issues. And of course, Mello's positions on, how to advance Omaha really look better to her. I think also most Nebraska Democrats look at Mello and say, if he gets in as mayor and he has a good let's say he has a good period, then 2020, he might be the right candidate to run for U.S. House.
Right.
He might be the guy because of his track record. I also think that there's a lot of people who look at him as, this is a young face, great accomplishments. He's the party of the future for them. Stothert is backed by pretty much just a moneyed wing of, I don't want to say, old guard is probably the wrong phrase. Probably
Okay.
the right phrase is people who just like to look at things like it's somebody's turn. Stothert is one who's hung around for a long time. It's people kind of look at it like, well, it's always been, her turn had to come around. But as far as leadership, she just hasn't really, if you look up her accomplishments, let's just say this, they're very thin.
Is Omaha a strong mayor town?
Yes. Omaha
Okay.
is one where the mayor actually has some real ability to get stuff done.
Okay. And so when I read reports of budget crises and issues with the police department, that can fall squarely within the realm of the mayor's office then.
Right.
Rather than a city manager's or some.
Right. Well, it's one where,
Like that.
let me put it this way. The mayor in Omaha can make a lot of difference, but the area where they make the most difference is what they say no to more than what they say yes to.
Well,
So, and the reason why I mean that is because they can say yes, and there's kind of a weave of how it gets done. But if they say no, they can stop things pretty cold.
Let me ask you more broadly about maybe this is process, because, I'm a believer that maybe people should pay dues. And Jerry Brown, the current governor of California, even though he had been a governor, he said he became a better governor by being mayor of Oakland. And I always thought, well, maybe the track should be that you should be a mayor. And then, that gives you a sense of something, at least in terms of the administrative level and whatnot, because it's, you're dealing with sometimes very basic issues with a constituency. Isn't that a kind of track that should be made rather than, like jumping right into, I don't know, leadership of the House Intelligence Committee or?
Yeah, look, there's some level of putting in your time that does matter, but at the same point, there's kind of a balance.
Right.
Just because you can put in a lot of time at something, that doesn't necessarily mean you're ever going to be good at it. I could spend the next 3 years trying to learn how to build a house, and I would still be crap at it at the end of 3 years.
Right.
But somebody spends 6 months at it, and they're very good at it, and you can tell pretty quickly, and you're like, yeah, okay. So it's not just the amount of time that you put in, it's the quality that you get out of it. And I think that's one of the things that also has to always figure in, and that's one of the things that we sometimes miss. Like up in Omaha, Stothert may have put in a lot of time, but there hasn't been any moment where you just said, my God, she's fantastic. This is fantastic. She's really got it.
Right.
Whereas Jerry Brown put in a lot of time. You're like, boy, he's really building into something. He's got something going on. And that is a difference that we sometimes miss, where we miss rising talent in favor of people who hang around.
Right. Well, we've actually come pretty close to the end of the show, even though we have a little bit of buffer here. But let's speak real quickly, just a minute or so, about Missouri GOP going back on a promise, and actually voter ID is going to be an issue at the ballot box.
Yeah. So last year they put on a state constitutional amendment that said we're going to change voter ID. But as part of it, they said we're going to run a voter education program that will tell people what they need to do before they vote. Well, come this year, as they trim budget, guess what got cut? Basically all the plans to inform people of what they need to go vote, which almost guarantees voter confusion. People will not be aware that, hey, these are the documents that they need, because, some documents will count, some won't. People who are used to the idea of, I could show up at a polling place with an electric bill or a water bill, that won't be good enough. But instead of following through on their promise, they basically decided, well, that costs too much. We don't want to run a piece of mail or a TV ad to explain this. Instead, they said, well, we'll focus on community groups. Well, behind the scenes, I didn't put this in the diary, but behind the scenes, there's been a lot of tisking because people are concerned those community groups are, guess what, going to be pretty conservative oriented, and so they are not going to inform everybody. This could turn into just certain people have the right information. I'm not saying it will, but that's one of the things a lot of people are concerned about. And it's one where anytime you set up for, hey, community groups, Missouri has a whole lot of small towns, so there isn't a single community group that's statewide in every single market. Hell, even in larger states, that's not possible. So they've just set up a patchwork of, a patchwork quilt designed to leave quite a few people out.
When Rome really began to fall, one of the issues that came up, there was a law that whenever there was a law issued, that the Senate had to engrave it on stone. Literally, that's how we come up with set in stone. But how they got around it is that they would put it so high up on the column or the edifice that they were supposed to put it on that you couldn't really read it in the plaza. They fulfilled the letter of the law, but they kept the actual information from the people. And this is just another one of those that just I hate making comparisons with Rome, but we probably don't want to go down that Roman path. So, well, thanks, Chris. We'll meet up with you next week. Thanks so much for today. All right. Well, we better bug out of here, folks. We got Hartman coming up, of course, about 6 minutes after the hour. In the interim, we'll listen to Govinda by Kula Shekhar and continue listening for the rest of the day. Netroots Radio. In fact, you should do it 24/7, 365. And why? Well, because who loves you, baby? Okay, Wink. I will see you on the other side.
All right. We're out.